Now, I want to interject a caution here because everything you've said is perfectly true, but I want to be sure we keep it clear. There are some singers that are perhaps too good at self-advocacy when they're first starting out and end up not listening to anyone. And
I agree.
so we want to be sure to indicate that there's some phenomenal teaching out there to be taken advantage of. And I'm even going to go so far as to say there are some incredibly toxic people who have incredibly valuable things to say, and you can get something from them if you know they're toxic and how to be careful. Can you talk about that balancing act of self-knowledge and advocacy versus knowing when to shut up and listen?
Wow, that's a perfect question. I will say that you're absolutely right. I have certainly encountered singers along the way who have been more self-promotion than talent. Um, and, uh, and I admire their ability to self-promote. I have never been that great at it. And so hats off to them. But if you can't deliver, that self-promotion will get you hired once at one house, one time. So you have to have, you have to deliver. That being said, taking, I will just say in the context, let's say that we're in orchestra time, right? Orchestra time is incredibly expensive. It has to do with lots more people than you. And so if the conductor stops during orchestra time and even brusquely says to you, no, bar 8, I asked you to do this, not that. Your job is to say, thank you, maestro, and to continue. Your job is not to say, listen, I said that and in, whatever, not the time, not the place, right? In no workspace, not in front of an orchestra, not in front of, in the middle of a presentation in a corporate sense, not in the operating room when the, when the patient is open, there's a time and a place for self-advocacy, and there's a time and a place to get the mission at hand accomplished. And when you're in the real time and very expensive time of putting together any operatic or classical performance, you must understand that this company is always operating on a shoestring, always operating down to the minute. Many other people are, stage crew, orchestra, administration, many other people are hanging on things going well and moving forward. That is not the time to insert your personal agenda, okay? That is the time to be a team player. That is the time to be a professional. That being said, if you need to self-advocate, there are hierarchies and structures in which to do so. If you know those, utilize those. Always take, if you have a personal issue with someone, take that to a separate area in a separate time in which no money is being lost and no, disrespect is being paid in a, in a professional sense. Operate as a professional, and then your self-advocacy will be clean because you've not only delivered, you've done your job, but then you have also stood up for yourself. You have to have that trifecta. Yes, there are many, many toxic people in this business who are tremendously talented and have a lot to give. And my rule with in those situations with myself is, if you can record a rehearsal, always record a rehearsal so that you can review it yourself and either take or leave their advice. If you cannot record a rehearsal, understand that generally when criticism comes that does not have a direct way of you, that is not clear and that does not have a direct way for you to correct it, it is more about control than it is about the criticism. Then you have to understand, why does this person seem to need to control me more than other people? You can troubleshoot that out later. But if, for instance, somebody says, you're singing sharp, well, that would be very difficult for you to sing sharp for an entire performance. That would make you very talented, right? So if you can say, are there areas of particular concern? And if they are able to be specific, then that is great. If you are able to say, is there a color to my voice that perhaps is not suiting what you would like me to change? Is this a color issue or is this a pitch issue? And are there general areas that I can look towards to correct this? Because I, of course, want to be my very best. Now, if they say, you know, damn it, you're always sharp and you're and I never wanted to cast you in the first place, that's probably a personal problem, you know, but you better make sure you're not sharp, you know, whether or not they like you is, you know, can't always be the case. So once again, if you had recorded that rehearsal, you could listen to it and say, you know what, actually, I'm pushing too hard. That's, and there is an edge that's coming through that he is perceiving as sharp, when in fact it is not a pitch problem, it's the problem with my technique. I'm going to correct that. I'm going to go back, I'm going to pull it together, you know, or, you know your technique well enough to say, if somebody says you're flat, know that that means, well, I'm clearly not supporting my breath well enough. So let's pull it together. Let's, you know, get my upper partials together. That's what's going on. Or I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm jet lagged. There's lots of ways to troubleshoot that. But to say I'm a terrible singer and I always sing flat is just useless to anybody. They may not have a lot of time to say in bar 5 on the second note, you were a little under the pitch. Sometimes they are, and that's great. And then they're helpful in that direct way. But sometimes they just have a general impression. And if that general impression is something that you can just troubleshoot through your technique and deal with, great. And if it's really about just browbeating you, then you need to understand that you are the target du jour and you need to let it go. And the best way that you can possibly let it go is if you have evidence of that rehearsal that you yourself can judge to either be good or bad. So always record if you possibly can. You also get lots of things like notes, and also learn a lot of things about what you're doing to hone your own craft. But those are the things that you can do to protect yourself in toxic people situations.
Well, I'd like to pull this back to students that may not yet have the opportunity to work in professional situations, and that also may not have quite the wherewithal to know as much about themselves yet as they need to know to navigate this. So let's bring it back to master classes in college, and let's bring it back to even working with your voice teacher, who once again may be in a situation where they're giving you comments that don't make sense to you, and that could be either because you don't have what you need to know to understand them, or it could be that they're giving you comments because it's a control issue for them. And it could be one on one day and one on another too. It could be it's a very confusing relationship, the student teacher, especially at a college and university level. Can you talk about that?
For sure, especially student teacher. The best student teacher relationships are student teacher relationships in which there is a lexicon of language and terms that are really clear between you and the teacher. And it would be great also if you had, for instance, lots of teachers will say, you know, darken that tone or something like that. If that causes you to jam your tongue, you need to have a different term. So if you could say to your teacher, I find that when you say darken that tone, I jam my tongue down the back of my throat. How can we work together to have a different way of unpacking that, where you get what you're auditorially looking for and I get the physical cue that my body is looking for to get the same thing. We're both after the same, moment here, but the language is getting in the way for me. Now, I know that takes a little maturity, and it takes an open relationship with your teacher in order to be able to do that. But it's always okay to say, could you say that a different way? I'm not sure that word is making me do the right thing. Is there something I could imitate, or is there just another way of thinking about it? Can we just review what all of that means? Because I feel like my body is doing a thing that is wrong when you're trying to get something that's right, and I want to be right. Once again, I'm going to go back to my former advice. Always record your lessons. This is your time to grow. And every lesson should be 5 lessons, right? Because if you've recorded that lesson and you have a lesson once a week and you review that lesson for the 5 days that you practice, you will come to the next lesson ready to take the next step forward. no teacher likes to teach the same lesson over and over and over and over again. Students that show growth are the students that take the learning tools that they have, whether it's videotaping, whether it's recording, whether it's, you know, practicing in front of a mirror. You are an inside-outside instrument. And so you have to have some idea and some tangible way of tracking your progress, because progress in vocal technique is very slight and very, very subtle as it goes along. Some days you'll have huge, you know, breakthroughs, but most of the time it's little subtle changes. And I learned that when I took up ballet as an adult, frankly. I recorded a lot of my ballet classes because I couldn't feel what the difference was between my foot being in the right place or my foot being in the wrong place. But when I saw it, my brain picked it up, my brain sent the signal to my foot, and it got fixed, because our kinetic energy and our kinetic chains, you know, need different cues from our brain in order to learn. And when your instrument is inside your body, you need lots of different ways of contacting that in order to just wake it up and make it responsive to your brain. So always record your lessons, always record your master classes. If there is a videotape available, I know it's painful, but please review it, because you will learn things about yourself, and you'll be able to become your own teacher. Because one day the goal is, right, to be out in the world and doing this, and your teacher can't go with you. And so the more you become someone who can teach yourself by observing yourself, and the more you can become independent in your development of your technique, the better you will be in the long run. Because one day you're going to wake up jet lagged and swollen, and you won't know how to put yourself back together, and no teacher will be there. These are the times where you are saving, you know, you're in safety, germinating this technique, and you must have as many ways to access that learning as possible. Did I cover everything?
I think so. I would say that you should write a book, but you already have, and I want to segue.
Nice one.
Thank you very much. You know, you're obviously, I mean, such a thinking person, and you've thought about this thing that you do from so many different angles. And I'm sure that's the case, that creative writing is a natural for you. And I want to let everybody know that you've published a book with the University of North Carolina Press under the name Blake Hilsiah. And the book is called Aaron McDuffie Moore, an African-American Physician. This was the first Black MD of Durham, North Carolina, and you've written a book about this person. Tell us why have you decided to write? This doesn't seem to be connected to opera, although I suspect some way it is.
Well, it is, in the sense that my writing method is probably quite connected to the operatic experience. But I will also say that it's important to say that this person, Aaron McDuffie Moore, was my great-great-grandfather. And so this is also an exploration of my background. Now, I don't look much like it, but I am a white-appearing mixed-race woman. My mother was Black, and my father is white. And I have quite an extended Black family, and quite an extended Black heritage, going back, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years. And so it was always my fascination to immerse myself in this world that I always sort of felt like was kind of an Atlantis for me. My Black relatives have always been kind of mysterious and beautiful to me in so many ways. And I come from a really unusual combination of quite undereducated whites and quite overeducated Blacks. And so, for instance, my white grandmother picked cotton, and my Black grandmother had a master's degree in business from Columbia. So it's a very deep and complex dichotomy that is at the heart of who I am. And I often say, especially in these times in which we are all, as a nation, examining our roots, and some of them quite painful to examine, particularly slavery and segregation and Jim Crow, um, that I am living proof that love can exist between the races. I was born of that love, and I was raised in uh, the love of a white family and a black family who, under no other circumstances, would have met or intersected. My father was the first in his family to be educated past fifth grade. His father was a hosiery mill foreman, and his mother was a domestic who took in laundry and often picked cotton. And my father, um, grew up and went to college and became the teacher's assistant for my mother when she was part of a desegregation program at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. At 16, she was a bit of a whiz kid. And they met when she was 19. And I ensued after they ran away for a little while to Paris. So going back and really finding my roots on this side of the family has always been a passion of mine. I've always been the person who saves old family photos, who wants to read the old family letters. It's the archaeologist in me again. And so when this chance came along for the Durham Colored Library Incorporated that he founded in 1913 to take on an initiative that would honor him, there was talk of having a monument built, and then there was talk of having a biography, a definitive biography of our founder, because he is an important figure in history and in Black history, and appears quite a lot, but has no central place in which to encounter him in his life. And because we had also a lot of family, even some taped family interviews from his daughter, my great grandmother, Lattimore Merrick, who lived until I was early college years, we had some ephemera and some family documentation that would make it even more unique than it would be as an academic piece. And so because my mother unfortunately passed away quite young, and was the academic and the writer in the family, I was tasked or asked or given the opportunity to be this new author and take on this project, which took 7 years of my life and was a great big learning curve for me. But once again, because I have lived my life taking, huge, big, thick scores of music and saying, this will all be in my brain, memorized and ready to go in the next 10 days, I was able to take that mindset and invent the process of doing this and continually challenge myself to learn every single step of this research. Going through an academic press is not for the faint of heart, and being peer reviewed by people who are chairs of departments at Duke was not comfortable, but was edifying and humbling, and made it a better book. And I couldn't be prouder of this achievement, but I also couldn't be prouder of the process that I got to go through of visiting with and walking with and discovering in myself this extraordinary man who spent his life in dedication to his community.
Do you plan to write any other books?
Well, yes, actually, I've gotten a taste for it. I've always been a person who's loved writing. I mean, I've kept a journal since I was 5. It was mostly about horses and their names and why I didn't understand that they were not mine. But, it was a journal at age 5. That being said, I definitely need a next project. I'm circling around numerous ones. The big problem, of course, with writing is that you've got to buy yourself time to do it. And so while promoting this book, and because of the unfortunate circumstance of having all of my work canceled as a singer uh, for the foreseeable future, hopefully maybe middle of next year it'll come back, but there's no guarantees. I have been building my writing business as a content manager and coordinator and a bit of a ghostwriter, and I'm editing everything from forensic documents to a book on genetics to some really wonderful world travelers memoir. So I'm doing quite a lot of other people's writing to stay afloat. But yes, I intend to write a next book, and I think that I will stay in the historical genre, but I'd like to take it a bit more into the place where I can let my imagination fly and not have to prove every single fact. So historically informed fiction will probably be most likely be my next endeavor.
Okay. Well, how would you like people to find out about you?
Well, they can find me on Instagram at Blake Hilsaya author. It's Blake underscore Hilsaya underscore author. They can find me on Facebook. Blake Hilsaya is on Facebook as an author, or Shana Blake Hill is also my Facebook page. Shana Blake Hill Soprano is easily found on Google as my website. And there will be a website upcoming for Blake Hilsaya and authorship. If you'd like to read the book, and it's here behind me. Oh, there you are. There, this is the book. And it is, if you just put my name into Google, you will find numerous places to partake of it. If you are not an Amazon supporter, it is also available from Barnes & Noble, from Target, from Goodreads. And there's also a bookshop site that is benefits your local bookstores. Local bookstores are starting to carry it as well, which I'm really happy to see. And the UNC Press website also carries it. So if you just Google my name, you will have Blake Hilsaya. You will have a myriad opportunities to partake of the book. The book, it's important to put forward that the book proceeds all benefit the Durham Colored Library Incorporated, which is a nonprofit that is particularly concerned with elevating the narrative in Black history of Black lives. And so it's a fine organization to both support and follow. They're also on social media, Durham Colored Library Incorporated. It's a historic name, much like NAACP, so don't be put off by the title. It's not a library, but it is a nonprofit, and it's a nonprofit that has initiatives like this book that really seek to reinsert African American lives and their stories into our mainstream historical spaces.
Shauna Blake Hill, Blake Hilsaya, thank you so much. It has been an extraordinary time. Thank you. Folks, we will see you all at our next interview. We're looking forward to interview Mr. Thomas Goss, orchestrator tutor. We're looking forward to that conversation in just a couple days. We're looking forward to promoting some other interviews that we have done but have not yet put out. Glow Boy is an interview that's coming out soon, and lots of others. Check our playlist out on YouTube.